Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq, with daily insight on the Nasdaq-100 index, or the NDX, which is made up of 100 of the largest domestic and international non-financial innovative companies listed on the Nasdaq stock market. The NDX has been the barometer for U.S. large cap growth and also one of the best performing indexes over the last decade and a half, not to mention one of the most liquid index ecosystems in the world. Joining me this Wednesday afternoon is Ryan McCormack, QQQ equity ETF strategist at Invesco, to discuss weekly trends in the Nasdaq-100 as we prepare to go into the Thanksgiving holiday. And Ryan, there really has been no shortage of news. And this Wednesday, even though it tends to be a little bit quiet, we still have a number of headlines that we're working with.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think when you're looking at Q's performance for the week, just narrowly edging the S&P 500 with QQQ up 0.88% versus the S&P 500 up 0.76. You look at the S&P value index there, up 1.86%. So once again, you see some value outperformance. I think a lot of that is centered around optimism around continued pretty solid COVID data from a number of different vaccine providers. We also saw the beginnings of the transition of power, and particularly some optimism around the announcement of the selection of Janet Yellen as the Treasury Secretary. So we kind of saw those risk assets run a bit. Little bit of a different story today, however, going back towards market action that we saw in the spring, where in times of uncertainty, you're seeing investors kind of flock towards large cap technology and specifically QQQ. That's around some mixed economic data. We saw initial jobless claims climb today for the second consecutive week. That's the first time that's happened since July. And then GDP data and some data points around that were roughly in line with expectations. But I think essentially this deluge of economic data has investors kind of going back towards wondering about the health and magnitude of the economic recovery.
Right, we're probably seeing that uptick in the unemployment numbers because we're starting to see more restrictions and some more local shutdowns, which is not surprising considering that COVID-19 is hitting new records. So we're kind of going in the wrong way with both of those pieces of data. Let's talk about the sectors that were moving the Nasdaq-100.
Yeah, so I think when we're looking at the sectors, right, unsurprisingly, it's these value-driven sectors like energy up nearly 10.5%, financials up nearly 4% on the week, materials up nearly 3% on the week. From a QQQ perspective, the real reason for outperformance there was consumer discretionary. You look at the disparity between the sector returns within QQQ versus the S&P 500, and really that's completely driven by Tesla, up nearly 26% on the week. Again, I think a lot of that optimism behind its inclusion in the S&P, upcoming next month.
And Ryan, you've also pulled in some economic data for us to take a look at with U.S. personal spending. What are you looking at here?
Well, I think you look at a lot of the headlines recently, and a lot of it is centered around kind of healthcare vaccine, what's going on with COVID. And right today, you have a very, very bullish report from Goldman Sachs talking about $13 billion of Moderna's vaccine sales for 2021. But kind of lost in this is the fact that here we are, tomorrow's Thanksgiving, Friday is Black Friday, and Monday is Cyber Monday. So it's, I think we do need to keep in mind that we got to keep an eye on what's going on with the consumer. I think what we're seeing here generally is sort of mixed forecasts around the holiday spending season. You have some folks that are a little bit worried in terms of what's going to go on this holiday season. You have the personal consumption numbers that went up 0.5%, but that's with personal income numbers declining by 0.7%. Comments from the National Retail Federation are showing November to December sales. They're expecting a 3.6 to 5.2% year-over-year growth. I think a lot of that is going to be driven by sort of the e-commerce world as folks are avoiding stores, avoiding long lines. I just think it's going to be a very interesting dynamic. So as we look at holiday spending and sort of some of the structural changes that we may see in these sorts of sales this year versus years past.
All right, Ryan, thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.